to another edition of Weekly Digest, a government information agency program that keeps you informed on what the administration has been doing that will create a better environment for citizens. I'm your host, Janelle Carter. Thank you for joining us. In this week's presentation for the period January 3rd to 9, 2015, Guyana Police Force's performance was exceptional in 2014 in spite of challenges. Cabinet gives approval for funding to extend GPHC's maternity ward, and aviation sector continues to expand as more domestic and international airlines continue to invest. You're tuned to the Weekly Digest, a government information agency program. $235.9 million has been approved by Cabinet for the extension of the maternity ward at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation as government continues to invest in the modernization of its health care facilities.
The money which was approved for the maternity ward will see the addition of 70 beds for prenatal as well as postnatal care. It will also cater for the addition of a new operating theatre to ease the burden on the two existing ones. Further, a portion of this funding will also be used for redesigning of the neonatal intensive care unit at the hospital, which has been providing a greater level of care to neonates. The GPHC has been benefiting from constant upgrades. To provide a more effective response to emergency cases, the Emergency Medical Technician EMT team recently received an ambulance valued $11 million from the Health Ministry.
Guyana has been given some support from another country. There's a Turkish donation which is being used to procure 2 more ambulances sometime in the next few weeks. So, Mr. Khan, I'd like to hand this over to your EMT.
In 2013, the hospital commissioned the southern section of its $94 million new wing and a $34.5 million water treatment plant to provide safer water for both patients and staff at the facility came into operation in 2014.
Despite challenges faced by the Guyana Police Force in recent times, Home Affairs Minister Clement Rohi has summed up that the force's performance for 2014 was exceptional as much was accomplished. The current administration has over the years reaffirmed its commitment through various means to ensure the safety of its citizens and that law and order is maintained. Subject Minister Clement Rohi said a lot of focus was placed on institutional and structural development for the force in 2014.
Save for the cases of police misconduct, an increase in disorderly murders, principally as a result of domestic violence, gun-related crimes, and road fatalities, which threaten public trust in policing over the past 12 months. The year 2014 has been an uneventful and relatively successful year for law enforcement agencies. Peace and good order in our society has prevailed, and the safety and security of the general population has improved significantly.
As government yielded to the call for increased manpower, Cabinet approved an increase from 3,410 to 4,956. An increase was also proposed for the Special Constabulary from 322 to 968 ranks. Further, an additional 161 ranks were added to the Traffic Department of the force, and this department also welcomed its first all-female batch of newly trained traffic wardens. 2014 also witnessed 26 officers becoming the country's first formalized special weapons and tactics unit, moving the country closer towards the goal of developing a professional police force capable of adapting to modern trends of crime. Overseas training was made possible through the force and Guyana's regional atmospheric hemisphere relationship. Meanwhile, Minister Rohi said that his ministry is satisfied that work has been done by the Strategic Management Department and others are ongoing with reform and modernization as a focal issue. As government continues to propel Guyana as a viable tourist destination, investors' confidence continues to be strong. This can be proven through a number of activities in the various sectors, one of which is the growing aviation industry.
Copa, Dynamic Airlines, and Curaçao-registered Insel Air are among the new airlines that commenced operating in 2014, adding to the growth in fleet of services operating the Guyana route. Conviasa expanded its flight from Venezuela to Guyana during 2014.
We have in excess of 54 planes on our national register. There are some 11 new planes being processed under approval, under consideration by the Civil Aviation Authority and the government with respect to the developments of and the growth of this sector.
Also joining the local industry in 2014 were Jags Aviation and Golden Arrow Airways. Golden Arrow Airways is a tour operator conveying people to remote and hinterland areas for tourism and other purposes.
In going forward to a new 100 years of aviation in Guyana, we have to be in the position of continuously developing and expanding the infrastructure and facilitating the industry so as to take care of the growth in our economy.
The new airlines bring new linkages with Guyana and South and Latin America, Asia and Africa. They also allow for a new era of movement of goods and services.
Stay tuned, more of the Weekly Digest after the break.
To ease traffic congestion along the East Bank Highway, which is a critical thoroughfare for accessing the city, plans are afoot to construct a new bypass linkage from Eccles to Diamond. Additionally, the feasibility study for the East Coast East Bank Bypass Road has been completed and government will be examining how to advance this huge project.
Ghana's crime fighting capacity has been boosted tremendously. A state-of-the-art forensic laboratory, the formation of the country's first ever special weapons and tactical SWAT unit, and institutional strengthening are some aspects of the sector's reforms. Capacity building has played an important role as ranks have received training both locally and overseas to effectively deal with various aspects of crime solving. A message from the Government Information Agency.
You're tuned to the Weekly Digest. Residents of Berbice are now benefiting from an enhanced electricity supply as Guyana Power and Light continues to implement strategies that will allow for a more reliable service.
Over the years, generation has been greatly improved for over 30,000 Guyana Power and Light customers in Berbice. In fact, in 2014, under the power company's transmission upgrade program, there was a greater link enhancing the connection between Berbice and Demerara.
And this has enabled us to transfer power between the Demerara side and the Berbice side, quite a lot of power to meet needs and to utilize equipment that is available. I would say, though, the particular thing in our period is the extension of electrification into the Berbice area, perhaps for a number of reasons. The electrification program in the 70s, particularly with our country being short of money and in economic difficulties, and maybe also, some would claim, political considerations, a lot of areas in Berbice were not yet connected up to the grid. And you would recall our unserved area electrification program, which ensured that all the areas, all the villages that were not on, we brought them on in that program from about 2004 to 2009. I think that's the big achievement over this period of time.
Prior to 1992, Gaisuku was responsible for assisting with power generation for some areas within Region 6, but was unable to provide service to many. In 1997, the government embarked on an electrification program in Regions 5 and 6, and communities such as Kanji, Gangaram, and Crabwood Creek received electricity for the first time. Additionally, during Phase 1 of the Unserved Areas Electrification Program, which was launched in 2004, 28 communities in Region 6 benefited, followed by 7 in Phase 2. In areas such as Blackbush Polder, The sum of $200,000 per household was invested in this regard.
Let me say, as a company, we have been looking at Berbice and seeking to improve the service for a number of years now. Let me recognize that we are not where we want to be.
Exactly.
We have challenges. But I think as we look back at 2014, our most significant achievement was linking Berbice with Demerara.
Indeed.
We now have an interconnected grid, something that we've spoken about for a very long time. We now have an interconnected grid between Berbice and Demerara. And so power can be transmitted and is being transmitted at a significant level all the way from Georgetown all the way to Berbice. So we are now tied there. When the transmission line goes down and Berbicians get blocked out, we feel it in Georgetown too.
Moreover, much work was done on the distribution system, which resulted in a reduction of distribution trips. Despite challenges, the level of supply of electricity has remained constant between 2013 and 2014, and GPL was able to deliver 97.5% of the total energy required. To further improve these services, this year GPL will be embarking on some new strategies, one of which is a comprehensive overhaul for both of the old Canefield 53 Village and Canefield Onvoak transmission lines.
The Hope Canal project has suffered a slight setback. However, government will ensure that the project will soon be completed.
The East Demerara Water Conservancy's Hope Canal project located at Hope, East Coast Demerara, has been delayed due to some overrun in costs. However, the project will be completed by government. The expected project was to have come to fruition by December 31, 2014. The bridge has been commissioned with the canal itself and the head regulator virtually completed, while the sluice is nearing completion.
A series of ponderables has delayed that, and we are now looking at a 15-second water compression.
Are there cost overruns?
Of course there will have to be cost overruns. I haven't been able, that's what I'm about to say. I haven't been able to qualify, and that probably would be done when the project is finished. Defects liability is invoked because, contractors have failed, and therefore they're penalized with defects liability. And when those are netted out, then you know what is the actual cost.
The penalties for the default.
He acknowledged that while there are expenditures which contractors and consultants will have to bear for the purposes of the overrun, it might be a big sum, but it also depends on what can be recovered.
When the project is completed and you go into the defects liability, it is at that point in time where this netting off takes place. Then we are left with a value where it is the treasury that has to meet those costs.
But you can't say the treasury will have to meet those costs.
Yes, and once you have expenditure that cannot be recovered and expenditure has to be made, I mean, you wouldn't believe it's possible to have $1 billion project that is delayed because millions are outstanding. So the government will complete if it is needed.
Government embarked on the US $15 million four-component Hope Canal project since it believed that this major undertaking will be the answer to the flooding experienced in the Mahaica, Myconia, Barrie areas annually during the rainy periods. The work at the Hope Canal project was carried out by the ministry's young engineers with consultants on the job at the various sites. The relief channel was excavated by the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority.
10,480 pensioners benefited from electricity subsidy in 2014 as government continues to seek ways in which it can ease senior citizens' financial constraints.
The electricity subsidy was introduced in 2014 as another initiative to further enable seniors to live better lives. A total of 10,480 seniors in Regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 benefited from $30,000 on their electricity bill. For the first half in 2014, 7,925 pensioners benefited from this program, while 2,555 were beneficiaries in the latter half.
We as Ghanaians, just like the outside world going through hell there, and we getting a problem here. And this country is trying its best. The Bible says, be contented with little you get than if you didn't get at all. The little problems we're going through in general, we must be satisfied because plenty of people in the outside world, all it says a well-developed country, you see what happening? We are here. The government and the opposition fighting against us because it's politics. I know it's politics among themselves. They don't care three down but me, you vote. They want me put them in, and then the opposition talking one thing, the government talking one thing. If the opposition going with the government, you can get a similar, because just like you and me will be in present situation, will be live economically in your home, you have problems. So we all have to be satisfied with what we get.
It's all right, because nobody don't afford the bill. I's not a pensioner, but I just feel it hard. Yes.
When you're talking, maybe it will be more.
Yes, yes, it is something coming in. That's right.
In 2013, senior citizens who are customers of the Guyana Power and Light received an annual electricity contribution of $20,000. In 2014, government announced a 50% hike in electricity tariff during the 2014 national budget, for which $300 million was invested. 23,810 pensioners benefited from water subsidy, amounting to $227 million in 2014.
Presidential advisor on governance Gil Teixeira has noted that an open and free press exists in Guyana, as it is one of the basic principles of a democratic society, of which the PPPC administration managed to create over the years. Validating her point, Ms. Teixeira pointed to the fact that government has only one television station, one radio station, and a single newspaper. This, she said, in contrast to the fact that there is a total of 20 television stations, 13 radio stations, and 4 daily newspapers. Hence, the private sector is in control of the mass media, she said.
Is there a free press in Guyana? Yes, there is. There's a very free press in Guyana. And that's one of the basic tenets, I believe, when you look at whether society is democratic or not. Is there open and free press? Yes, there is.
Evidence that a democratic society does exist, she added, is the fact that Guyana has had 5 free and fair general elections.
If you look at the electoral laws, because dictators generally don't like elections and they don't hold elections, or that if there are elections, they're rigged. We have had, from 1992 to now, 5 elections that have been free and fair, that have been observed by international observers, that have seen that they are free and fair elections, and that the PPP has won these elections. At no point were they an accusation or that the elections were fraudulent. And so we're proud of that. We're proud of that history of people having the right and the freedom to vote for who they want, unencumbered, unfettered.
She further dismissed claims that Guyana is a failed state and claims by the opposition that the head of state is a dictator. She labeled the political opposition as the actual dictators who, through the myth of the one seat, feel they can run the government from the outside. The fact that the opposition took such a strong position and cut some $90 billion in total from the national budget is an indication, Teixeira opined, of what will happen if they should ever gain power, since their position is dictatorial already. Stay tuned, there's more after the break. During Cabinet's statutory meeting at Office of the President on January 7, 2015, several issues of national concern were discussed. The media was subsequently briefed on Cabinet's deliberations.
At its January 6 statutory meeting, Cabinet gave its no objection to contracts for the Office of the President, Tourism, GCOM, Youth, Sports and Culture, Health, Public Works and Security. Cabinet Secretary Dr. Roger Lunchan said the government's move to distance itself from the formation of a so-called civil society umbrella group have been proven correct, since the check uttered as payment for the use of the International Conference Center for the December 17th meeting has not been honored.
The government alluded to
numerous public concerns about the organization of the event. Significantly, investigations subsequently of the event further influence the government's position.
The Cabinet Secretary also announced the appointment of Dr. Winston McGowan as the Cricket Ombudsman, Patrick Findlay as Permanent Secretary with responsibility for Labour in the Labour Human Services Ministry, and Daneshwar Dionarain to act as Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Industry and Commerce. The Cabinet Secretary also lauded the Joint Services members who were promoted. He also pointed to the need for the purchase of more ballot boxes for the upcoming general elections.
One of the realities is that the challenges to the results of the general and regional elections demand the preservation of evidence. And it is in that context that somewhere in Guyana, presumably in the coffers or under the security of GECOM, are ballot boxes stuffed, maybe not stuffed, filled with ballots cast.
It was also indicated that government is still keen to realize the construction of the specialty hospital.
We are awaiting the consideration of officialdom in India to take our next steps in our commitment to have the specialty hospital built in Guyana.
Dr. Luncheon also stated that negotiations are still ongoing to complete the ICT link between Guyana and Brazil.
A foreign consortium were engaged, and I should say are engaged, with central government on the way forward, essentially to ensure the serviceability of the fiber. You may know, it has been acknowledged that there has been significant defects along the way from Lethem to Georgetown, and those would have to be corrected for the bandwidth that is being purchased from Brazil to be made available for domestic use in Guyana.
He also added that government will complete the Hope Canal project, which will be delayed due to some overrun in costs.
And now for perspectives with Dr. Prem Nazir.
President Donald Ramotar is currently attending the 13th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in India. The Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is an annual gathering of overseas Indians who engage with the government of India for mutually beneficial activities. The Pravasi Bharatiya Divas symbolizes a perpetual continuity and bonding of overseas Indians to their Indian cultural heritage. Many overseas Indians in the 21st century, that is, Indians from the Indian diaspora at the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, are largely professionals whose migration to the Western world has no parallel with that of the 19th century and early 20th century overseas Indians who also migrated from India. They were called early indentureds. And early indentureds inhabited a dehumanized, total institutional environment with no mobility, enslaved by the tyranny of the rule of law, and reduced to a history of humiliation. And it is the early indentures' cultural legacy that today has concretized the pillars of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas' annual or I should say the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas annual forum that forges the mutual link between overseas Indians and India. How did the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas become a reality? The government of India, under the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 2000, appointed the high-level committee on the Indian diaspora. This committee, under the chairmanship of Dr. L.M. Singhvi, a then Member of Parliament and a former High Commissioner of India to the UK, made several recommendations, among which included the hosting of the annual Pravasi Bharatiya Divas and conferral of the Pravasi Samman Awards to both people of Indian origins and non-resident Indians. Each year since 2003, January 9 is the day that is set aside to celebrate Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, as it was on this day that Mahatma Gandhi returned to India from South Africa. The Pravasi Bharatiya Divas addresses two types of people: persons of Indian origin, they're called PIOs, and non-resident Indians, referred to as NRIs. PIOs, or people of Indian origins, are foreign citizens of Indian origin or descent, and let me say this in another way. The PIOs, who are referred to as people of Indian origins, are foreign citizens of Indian origin or descent, and the non-resident Indians are Indian citizens living overseas for an indefinite period. The Indian diaspora includes both people of Indian origin and non-resident Indians, comprising about 25 million Indians scattered over 110 countries, representing about 1.7% of India's population. But for the first time in Indian history, India has provided the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in India itself as a bonding meeting place for its overseas kinfolks. Every member at Pravasi Bharatiya Divas conferences comes to solidify this bonding with India, and hopefully India would want a bonding with its diaspora, a bonding that requires reciprocity and a political will. Indeed, there is a growing need to have a working relationship of overseas Indians with India amid a fiercely brutal economic globalization process, working to the disadvantage of poor developing economies. A sustained relationship requires an application of the principle of reciprocity, making both parties stakeholders. Both parties would need, however, to have a mutual understanding of what is happening in India on the one hand and what is happening in overseas territories where they live on the other hand. And Vajpayee's commitment to overseas Indians is encouraging, as each overseas Indian takes a piece of India in the new abode. I thank you very much indeed.
And with those features, we have come to the end of this edition of Weekly Digest. But before we go, here's a recap of the highlights. Guyana Police Force's performance was exceptional in 2014 in spite of challenges. Cabinet gives approval for funding the extension of GPHC maternity ward, and aviation sector continues to expand as more domestic and international airlines continue to invest. Please note that Weekly Digest and other government information can be found on our website www.gina.gov.gy, or you can send us your comments and suggestions at ginagovgy@gmail.com. Join us again next week as we highlight more of the government's programs and policies that are aimed at enhancing the lives of citizens. I'm Janelle Carter. Do have a safe week ahead. Goodbye.